very good evening, namaste, namaskar, and a very warm welcome to each one of you. Thank you for gracing this occasion with your presence. Warm wishes to each one of you once again from Entrust. Entrust Advisors is a fee-based boutique advisory firm catering to ultra-high net worth individuals, families, and corporates. Started by a group of ex-bankers with the objective of providing complete solutions for investment advisory, business advisory, value-added services. Apart from investment needs, we also engage with clients on value-added services like tax planning, legal services, trust services or succession planning, and philanthropic services. These services are of course delivered through a set of knowledge partners and experts. Recent trends suggest that a large number of clients are now actively looking at various ways of contributing back to the society. Some have already trodden this path, while some have moved to this direction. This event this evening is conceived with this thought in mind. This evening is going to be a very different evening. When we close the discussion by the end of this evening, we believe we would have more insights and clarity in our approach to philanthropy. Hence, the theme, Ideas for a Beautiful World. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome Mr.Anand, Sudarshan. May I now request Mr. Ravi Venkatesan, he's the chairman of Social Venture Partners India, to kindly join us. May I now request Mr. Naryan Ramachandran, he's the founder of InKlude Labs, to kindly join us, please. May I request Ms. Subshini, founder of Vasantharatna Foundation for Art. Dr. Sheilu Srinivasan, founder, president, Dignity Foundation. Seeking the divine blessings, ladies and gentlemen, once again, can we please put our hands together for all the dignitaries who did the honors for the lighting of the lamp. To extend a warm welcome to each one of you and also to deliver the keynote address, let me call upon stage Mr. Rajmohan Krishnan. He's the co-founder and managing director of Entrust. He's the thought leader of Entrust team. Mr. Krishnan is a visionary by nature and an entrepreneur at large. He's recognized as one of the leading private bankers in India. Ladies and gentlemen, we request you to kindly welcome Mr. Rajmohan Krishnan.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to welcome you all today evening for a first anniversary celebration. I thank each and every one of you for having taken time out and come all the way to be part of this event. It gives us great pleasure. My sincere thanks to the panelists, Mr. Anand Sudarshan, Mr. Ravi Venkatesan, Mr. Naryan Ramachandran, Ms. Subshini Vasanth, Dr. Sheilu Srinivasan, for taking time out, coming here to share your experiences with all of us. I would like to call my two other co-founders, Mr. Ramesh, please Ramesh, Rakesh, and all the other team members. Ramesh, there's one more Ramesh. Where is he? Raji, Preeta, Apali, Murli, where is Murli? And Saravanan and Rajesh. I think they are doing their duty outside. It's a wonderful team, and I thought let me introduce. My greatest inspirations have been my parents. Coming from a very humble middle class background, what we have seen them, what we have learned from them is all about hard work, dedication, and also they taught us to be honest. I think that's what makes us stand here and talk to you all. And that's going to be the foundation stones for Entrust. During one of my sessions with Uday Kotak, in fact, I heard him mentioning, please don't chase money, chase goals. if you reach your goal, money automatically is with you. I think it meant a lot to all of us. And that's the very reason we chose an investment advisory model. And clearly, that's the reason for the genesis of Entrust. I want to read out something which is very, very interesting. I'm sure that most of you would have read too. Something Steve Jobs said in 2005, Stanford commencement address. And it really meant a lot to all of us. And I'm sure it'll mean a lot to most of the entrepreneurs today. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. I think it's a fantastic statement what he made. I think it's too impressive. And we are all, I think the entire foundation or the what do you say, the genesis of our company, I think we followed our heart. When we started talking about doing something on our own, the only thought in our mind was to create an organization which practices alignment, ethics, and transparency. And of course, we should thank, when we started, there were 2 to 3 clients who believed us on day one and helped us jumpstart. I think a big, big thanks to them. Without them, we wouldn't have been here at all. I want to just give you a gist about what Entrust is all about, why we are here. In fact, when we started, we did a sample. We met very many clients. We started talking to them. We discussed the business model. We said whether this kind of a business model interests people. I think there is always a mixed response for everything. You have positives and negatives. And we were very strongly, and particularly, I would say, Ramesh and me started thinking about this firm 4-5 years back. And we were very, very strongly believing, saying that a neutral advisor is something which is very important in today's world. If you look at the Western economies, it exists in the US, in the UK, most of the countries, you have neutral advisors. But in a place like India, it's not picked up. It's just picking up. So, really speaking, it's like we wanted to explain why we exist in this ecosystem of already crowded financial services, if you feel it's crowded. As an advisory firm, we are client-focused, offering continuity and personalized care. Being a boutique, we build long-term relationship with clients. I would like to little bit expand this and probably tell you, every bank has got some great guys, some not so great guys. There are clients who swear by the bank, swear by the institution. Some people at the same time say that, no, I'm not so satisfied. It's ultimately, it's not about the institution. Institution is always good. But ends up with what is the kind of people you deal with. Finally, end of the day, who's the guy, who is the person, who is the relationship person, or who's the contact point, whether it's a retail bank, whether it's a private bank, any bank for that matter, what it matters is the person whom services you. And that makes a huge difference. And that is what is the difference we are trying to make here. All of us, if you look at most of us, have spent more than 15, 16 years in financial services industry, well-paid jobs. We have quit and we have started here because we believe that we can handle very, very personalized care we can give for clients. We can offer unbiased advice, and we are identified ourselves as an advisor. Next is, just tell me, whenever an opportunity is showcased, the tendency to discuss returns and positives of the product is always there. Nobody talks about risk. Just imagine a relationship manager comes to you and probably talks about a product and says, it's very risky to invest in this product, but still, I recommend you to put money. I don't think any of us will put money. Everybody talks about the greener side of the product. But that is where, in Entrust, we differentiate. We look at the entire product from a risk angle. In fact, we call ourselves a risk managers than money managers, actually. The third and the most important one is our model is purely based on an advisory fee earned from the client. We don't make any money anywhere. And definitely not through selling products. So we don't sell products. We just advise clients. We are at their side. We are a filter for the client. I think these are the three, tenets of our offering, and continuity and personalized care, risk management, and alignment and transparency. That's it about Entrust. In this momentous occasion, I would like to thank a few people without which we wouldn't be there. I would like to make a special mention about Mr. Subbu Subramaniam. Subbu is managing partner of MCAP Advisors, and he has been with Bearings for quite some time as one of the partners. He is in the board of Nucleus. He is in the board of L&T Finance. He's given so much of thought process to us, and we are all so much indebted to him. It's really a phenomenal thing. Thanks a lot, Subbu, for always being there with us. I want to thank Jai, a mentor and member of our advisory board. Despite being very busy, he's a very, very busy man. He's a corporate trainer. He is always available for us. Phenomenal, Jai. Thanks. Next is Mr. Anand Sudarshan. In the last 5 months, from the time we met him and requested him to be a mentor and an advisor, we have met and spoken many times. In fact, it's become a philosophy in Entrust, saying that whenever there is a doubt, we just call Anand. He'll have a solution immediately. It's been a fantastic experience, Anand, to work with you. Thanks a lot. Of course, without the family's support, we can't run a business. Tremendous kind of a support we had from the family. I think it's hats off to them. I need to mention about the Entrust family. I think that's the maximum time we spend in office. Even after office, we keep talking to each other, brainstorming. I think it's a great team. It's a fantastic, mature team, as you yourself have seen. I think thanks everybody for being there and doing it all. A great strength for Entrust. And there are many other people. I don't know, in this hall itself, there are many other people whom I met. Dr. Shastri, Raman, Mr. Shah. There are so many people are here. In fact, I'm just missing out, but everybody, whomever I meet, I think they've been greatly supportive. Thanks a lot, sir. Lastly, I would like to end by saying, we at Entrust believe, and which all your presence reconfirms it. One of the greatest pleasures of wealth is giving back to the society. I think with this note, I welcome the panelists for the panel discussion. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
And like he rightly said, it's time for us to move on to the moment for which all of us have gathered right here this evening for, as we move on to the panel discussion. The topic being investing in goodness. To Mr. Ravi Venkatesan, he's the chairman of the Social Venture Partners India, to kindly please join us up on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, please put your hands together as I welcome Mr. Ravi Venkatesan. Mr. Naryan Ramachandran, founder of InKlude Labs, to kindly join us up on stage. Good evening, sir. Good evening, ma'am. Of course, our moderator, but it is my task to introduce our moderator this evening. Mr. Anand Sudarshan, he's the founder and director of Sylvant Advisors Private Limited. Mr. Anand is an advisor and consultant. He's also an independent director at Manipal Global Education Services Private Limited. Prior to his stint with Manipal Global Education Services, he was president ADIA International. In 1989, he co-founded the Microland Group. He's an active supporting the Government of India in policy formulation, and is a member of select committees and task forces of Planning Commission of India, as well as the Ministry of Human Resources Development. Over to Mr. Anand Sudarshan.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank Raj and his entire team. I congratulate Raj, his co-founders, Raji and all his colleagues. It's a great feeling, you know, when you are a startup and you're putting things together, and I've done it several times. It's a feeling like none other. It's extraordinary, and it's a privilege to be a part of that little journey, and hopefully it'll become a long journey and a very successful one So congratulations and all the best to the team, to Team Entrust. It's also my pleasure to and a singular honor to be a part of this panel. Ravi, to my far left, as the moderator mentioned, as the MC mentioned, is the founder of Social Venture Partners India, which is a network of engaged philanthropists addressing social problems through venture philanthropy. He's also the managing partner at Unitis Seeded Fund, about which I know quite a bit, having been introduced to this field a little while ago. And of course, he's a former chairman of Microsoft India, and I have known him for many, many, many years now. It's an extraordinary professional, and it's great to have him here. Joining Ravi is Naryan, whom actually I met, about 3-4 years back, was it? Yeah, 4 years back or so. When he was part of, or maybe just after he had moved out of the Morgan Stanley group, who led the bank here in India. He's had a long and distinguished career as an investor in emerging markets. After moving out of Morgan Stanley, he's actively involved in a variety of roles in the social sector, InKlude Labs, and I read about it before, as a part of preparing for this evening, is a forum to scale up proven interventions in the areas such as health and education, and there are some thoughts there which will probably, you will resonate, many of you will resonate with, and I'm looking forward to discussing those today, in this evening. Thank you for being here, Naryan. Joining us, of course, is Subshini Vasanth, who is a renowned Bharatanatyam dancer, and she set up the Vasantharatna Foundation for Art in memory of her husband, Colonel Vasanth Venugopal, who was awarded posthumously the Ashok Chakra for exemplary bravery while in action in Jammu and Kashmir. I was speaking to her yesterday, and I was trying to understand the role and focus of this foundation, and it's interesting to note that the drive and focus in an area which otherwise we would all perhaps respond with an emotion of, dare I say, pity and a little bit of pride when you see it on TV, right? And frankly, nothing beyond that. And the amount of work that needs to be done in that area, and she's going to speak about that, I hope, it's incredible. So I've learned a lot yesterday, and I look forward to learning more today as well. And finally, Dr. Sheilu Sreenivasan, who's been in this giving sector, and I use the word giving, and I will probably use the word several times today because that's what it is at the end of the day. And it really is something that I hope to co-discover along with these panelists and learn today. And hopefully as a part of the process, there is something that's left behind for each of us to carry back as well. And she has been in the giving segment, so to speak, for a number of years, almost 20 years. She runs Dignity Foundation, which is a not-for-profit organization committed to changing the way people look at aging in India. She used a phrase when we were standing outside, productive aging. I'd really love to hear more about it today, among other things. And it's a phrase that I responded actually immediately to it. It's something again that many of us will possibly, it will resonate with us. What we're going to do today is to keep this as a conversation. The context today is very simple. As I mentioned, it's giving, investing in goodness. I think one of the things that we all talk about, Entrust and people like Entrust, introduce themselves as wealth managers, right? So we all do wealth management, and you're all ultra high net worth individuals. You will have a lot of wealth, and you need somebody to help you manage the wealth. Now, the word wealth normally is associated with money, right? So, but then we suddenly remember somebody told us health is wealth, isn't it? So wealth management should possibly include annual health checkups, maybe. So there is something more to wealth management than just money. Now, people have also told us that our families are our wealth, isn't it? Our daughters and sons, our aunts and uncles, parents, they are our wealth, right? So the wealth definition suddenly keeps getting expanded. It moves from money to health to family. And you know what? There is another part to it as well, which is giving. giving leads to not just a feel good. I mean, there is a do good, of course, and then there is a feel good that follows after that. But I think it is beyond that. It actually ensconces our individual persona and enhances our own worth, our own sense of having done something truly useful and valuable. The only problem is, if that's wealth, there aren't really anybody. There isn't somebody who really is there to advise us about, that part of wealth. And what we are hoping to do today, and that's the context that I want to share with you, is to, along with me, please join me in learning about this part of wealth management from this very distinguished panel here in front of us today. The format today is pretty simple. I'm going to ask a question, and after that keep quiet, and then listen and learn. And we will then make it into a dialogue, and after a little while, we will open it up for questions. I'm really hoping that this would be participatory, and there would be a lot of questions from all of you. So don't leave the question asking just to me. So every one of you is a moderator in that sense, and you will get a chance to be one. And through that process, if at the end of this evening, if we have been able to leave you with some small sense of creating, and I used to be in the IT industry, so pardon me for, and Ravi will understand immediately what I'm talking about. If we can leave you behind with the first steps of creating an architecture for giving for yourselves individually, we would really feel we have achieved something. And probably can't give all the answers for sure, but really create an architecture in your mind. And then I'm hoping that our friends in Entrust would reach out to you and hopefully help enrich that initial thoughts into a sustainable architecture over a period of time. Is that okay? Yeah, great. All right, let me just get going, and I'm going to start with Dr. Sheilu here, who really brings an extraordinary amount of wealth of experience in the giving sector. Giving side of life. Dr. Sheilu, my question is very simple. Since 1995, you have seen the growth of Dignity Foundation. You have engaged yourself in an area which individually we probably passionately respond, with our own parents or elderly in our own, homes and families, but possibly do not have as much of an understanding of the sheer magnitude and size of the problem. And in that journey, and I would request you to share your journey over the next few minutes, and also talk about, this whole aspect of people who have been contributing to this process, to the giving part of it, so to speak. Would that be okay?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Anand. Thank you very much, Entrust and Rajmohan, to have brought us all here together. I'll be happy to share my journey very briefly. And I work in an area where nobody wants to be there. Nobody wants to be called old. There is a huge amount of denial. We publish a magazine called Dignity Dialogue. And when I went to a 72-year-old celebrity author, telling her, I would like to profile you in Dignity Dialogue magazine, she said immediately, oh, Sheilu, I don't want to be appearing in your magazine because everybody would know I'm also old. The first sign of a gray hair, we want to hide it, because of a huge amount of negative stereotypes that there are. That old people are no more cognitively stimulating. Old people are very slow. They are stuck in the mud. In 1995, it appeared to me that there is this segment of the population that nobody is doing anything for. So the foundation was set up as a social support service system dealing with the different types of insecurities, personal insecurities, financial, health-wise, physical securities and finding joy, giving joy in the lives of the elderly people. Today, we have a presence in 5 cities, and we have about 60,000 members who take benefit of the services.
Thank you. Fascinating. I'm going to come back to you on that phrase maybe a little later, which you shared with me, because that's really kindled my interest. Let me ask Subshini the next question, which is very simple. I mean, think about it. You keep reading that 65% of India's population is the youth, right? So knock that out. And then you have the middle-aged, knock all of that out. So let's say the elderly that Dr. Sheilu addresses is about 5% of the population. You know, I don't know the exact number, but I'm just thinking about it. That's still 8.9%. Thank you. So that's still, you know, roughly about 100 million plus people, right? So if you are addressing 60,000 members now, you are maybe addressing 1,200th of the total number. So it's still a large enough, huge space that she operates in. Now, what you do is the other end of the spectrum, which is a microcosm where the needs are as, you know, strong or as absolutely required as it is in the case of the area that Dr. Sheilu focuses on. I know there were personal reasons that helped you look at that as the area that you want to focus on. But can you take us through the journey, if that's okay with you, and what your effort today focuses on, and why this is something that's equally important, even though, you know, we are really talking about a very small section of the society, so to speak.
Thank you, Anand. It's very interesting how I came to start the foundation. I was a normal housewife, married to an army man, going all across India with 2 little girls. And of course, I've always been dancing from when I was a kid, so dance was kind of my touch earth, and it kind of held me together wherever I went, whatever I was doing. It still does. So that being said, when Vasanth was martyred in Kashmir in 2007, it was a bolt out of the blue, and I really did not know what had hit me. Coming from the kind of social background that I belonged to, my family, very liberal, very forward, very normal, I must say, a normal middle-class family. I was very, very well taken care of. I was super well protected. And I didn't feel anything else other than the loss of a spouse and a loved one, and being alone in that sense. And the kind of good wishes, the kind of warmth, the kind of empathy that I received from people I do not know. I didn't know a lot of people who reached out to me. Believe me, it was overwhelming. And I said, what do I do with all of that? There's so much goodness coming my way. I was kind of, you know, it was saturating in a sense, and also it felt very selfish to hold on to all of that. So many families from martyred Jawans in rural India not receiving 1,000th of that. I just couldn't sit quiet. There was something within me that said, I have to reach out to them. I have to just be the bridge that lets all this goodness flow from across, that's reaching to me, reach out to them. So that was the motivation through which I started the foundation. And I knew all these families, I was in touch with them. Of course, it took some time for me to kind of find my own feet. But we started off immediately, thanks to my family and some friends around me. Thank you, Anand. Thank you.
I made a difference, and that's what you felt that's what you feel when you meet in each and every one of them. This is interesting. So there's on the one hand, 60,000 people, you know, a sector which is normally completely ignored. On the other hand, 35 families, but a sense of individual personal satisfaction. I made a difference. So that's actually a nice cue for me to ask Naryan. So here is the question of scale versus deep local impact, Naryan. And I'm now going to jump from the heart side of things to the head side of things, right? To the other two.
Hey, excuse me.
but with a little bit of heart. There's a lot of heart. I knew he was going to pile on to me.
So, Anand, thank you for that heartless introduction. So, you can see how he set this up, you know. So the two women with the nice saris and the very emotive content set up against, it's just completely so happens, two IIT guys who went to the same university, same class, I think. So this is, no way we can win this. So I'm going to actually turn it to you rather than turn it to me, at least to begin with. And that is to say, and I'm going to be really heretical on this panel, and say that each one of you have done a lot already. But if there's one thing I would suggest you take away from this, and you could only do one giving thing you could do in whatever way you want to do it, and that is to create jobs. Because that's the best way to give back, at least to the India of today. So I think jobs empower people. If you can give jobs to women, even better. But it empowers people, it empowers families, it gets them for generations to do beyond what we as individuals can do, including an 80-year-old. Why not? And there are many 80-year-olds who are very, very productive, you know, wife of martyrs or spouses of martyrs. Whatever the category of jobs is, I think the best you can do is to give jobs. And I guess that's what you all do well. But every one of us goes through a period of introspection. It happens to some as early as 30, some a little later in life. And then you think about, so what is it that I want to do with my life? When is enough enough? And some of you may be going through it now. Some of you may have been through it already and are getting to the other side. I went through it, whenever I ask my wife, should I say I'm on I worked on Wall Street, she says, no, just lie and say you were a librarian. So I was a librarian for 25 years. And introspection came to me at that point, and I said, hey, listen, I need to figure out where I can give of my time and money to projects. And I have nothing against small, deep, passionate ideas. So an orphanage in your community, old age home, whatever it is. There are many, many forms of deep, local, passionate giving. But just given where I came from and relating it to what Raj said earlier, each of you needs to make that decision for yourself, which is, who am I and what do I want to do? And so, which Steve Jobs said so eloquently in that little quote that Raj made. So my version of it was, hey, listen, I've been trained in the corporate sector, I've been trained as an engineer, I've been trained for scale. So what I need to do is to look at evidence-based thing and then scale the heck out of it. So that's what I did. 2 years ago, I set up, and again, we can talk about structures, which is another very important discussion you need to have in India, because unlike most other countries in the world, it is better to keep your money outside a foundation and give annually rather than put it inside a foundation, because there are many, many restrictions inside foundations that give you less return than outside the foundation. So there's a whole structural discussion to this. But I set up a couple of companies that maximize that ability to give into any project. And the project I set up was to deworm school children in India. So last year we did 35 million children in 3 states. Just 3 states of India has 35 million children. And the method of scaling was essentially to go through the government system. So if you ask me what one thing I've learned, it is how to figure out how to talk the principal secretaries into actually getting something done. So that's what we did, and over the last 2 years, that's where we've gotten. And my hope is over the next few years that we can actually reach a substantial percentage of the 150, 200 million kids that go to school. Deworming, very simple idea, 1 pill, 1 kid once a year, but has enormous impact if it's done through the primary school ages for children. It allows for cognitive development in a manner in which it's a very simple, low-cost intervention that allows children to grow up normally, attend school, be present in school mentally and physically and grow from there. So I'll leave you with this thought that you really have to think about it for yourself. There is no, you can only take elements of what we have done and apply it to your idea. You may just say, hey, listen, my method of giving is to create another 100, 500,000, 10,000 jobs. And that's perfectly fine. I don't think you should let anybody else define for you, as Mr. Buffett and others have done, that you have to give away 50% of your wealth. I think that's obtrusively paternalistic. You should entirely decide it for yourself. But in what manner, how the engagement is, do you give of your time? Do you do 5 things rather than 1 thing? There are many, many dimensions to how you choose to move on in your own lives. And I'd be happy to participate in any of those conversations you like, but I'd encourage you to definitely think about it.
Thanks, Naryan. It's truly the lamb of Wall Street speaking, not a librarian, sir. Call you by a different name. That's interesting. A completely different perspective, and I think it's highly local too. Think about it. The impact is, it's highly local. It's 35 million, which is scale, and at the same time, it's community-based. Single activity, very focused, fantastic. Ravi, impact investing, social sector investing. Is this whole the thesis of you do good, you feel good, and you also make good money? Is that a kind of a combination that's possible at all? And obviously the money gets turned back into more and more activity, but it's goal-driven. It takes perhaps some of the good lessons from the corporate world, puts it in place. Is that what it is? And if it is it something that's sustainable and interesting?
I warned Anand that my style, after many months on the road talking to journalists and panels, is regardless of the question I'll decide what the answer is. So I hope I eventually come to his question. I want to start with where Narayan left off. When it comes to giving, there's no right answers. It's a deeply individual thing, and it's how, the way you feel is right is actually the right thing. So perhaps what I'll do is share a little bit of, my own thinking was going to fundamentally change. And I thought, I wanted to be a part of it and contribute to it. And in many ways, it's been a great ride. But I find it deeply disturbing today to look around and see what's happening, right? 70 years after independence, you have some staggering statistics. But 1 out of 3 Indians making less than 76 rupees. Half of our homes don't have toilets. 3/4 don't have drinking water, right? India's number 134 on the list of countries in terms of ease of doing business. Okay, so it's behind Yemen and Pakistan, which is quite a shocking statistics. 1/3 of our politicians are criminals. And the elected government of the world's largest democracy with the rule of law tries to overturn a Supreme Court ruling banning criminals from politics. So I find this, this is truly, truly quite an alarming situation. And what are we going to do about it? Because we can't sit quiet. Now, I'm coming to philanthropy. This is not a political speech. I'm not joining Aam Aadmi Party, unlike many others, and so on and so forth. It's not a political speech. So we have giant needs in our country. And, who's to decide, whether to contribute to incredibly passionate local causes or, highly scalable things. That's your decision. But I decided to focus on 2 things. One is, at Microsoft, I learned about discipline and scale. So we took a simple thing. 2004, when I joined the company, it was one of the most hated companies in the world. Okay? Because people hate success and they hate companies that make money without doing their social obligations. So we started a small thing called computer literacy through a program called Shiksha. And it was started as CSR, except I refused to treat it as CSR. I said, we'll make it real. And by the time I left in 2011, Shiksha was now in 14 states, 35 million children, according to the audited figures, who had learned how to use computers, whatever. And I realized, if you want to do something, you have to be disciplined, you have to think about sustainability, you have to think about business models and all these kinds of things that Naryan alluded to. And so as a result of that, one of the things I've done is with 2 other Microsoft guys, we formed this fund called United Seed Fund, and we invest in early stage social enterprises which are trying to solve desperately important problems, whether it's skilling, education, healthcare outcomes, financial inclusion, all these things, but with a business model and promising people a reasonable return on their investment. So that's one part of it, social enterprise. The other part of it is how are we going to solve that other big issue, which is the breakdown of governance in our country at the national level, at the level of states and cities. And it's sort of futile blaming all these politicians. The reality is the fundamental problem is middle class and upper middle class Indians withdrew from society. We have all withdrawn from society. We don't care whether government services work or not because we privatize it. If the education system doesn't work, no problem. Send your kids to private schools, send them abroad. Healthcare system doesn't work, go to private hospitals. If the grid doesn't work, buy a generator. If there's no water, drill your well. And obviously, if the government's not going to deliver anything, why bother even voting? Because it's one set of scoundrels versus the other, so 38% turnout. So we've seen this extreme withdrawal of people like us from society. And if we don't reverse that, just sort of relying on Narendra Modi to win the election and fix it is not going to happen. So the other part of what I decided is we've got to find a way to get successful, middle class, and educated urban Indians re-engaged in society. And one way of doing it is through politics and all that. But there's a different way. I found that almost everybody I spoke to has this deep desire after the age of 40 to give back. Okay? They're concerned about the way our cities and our country is going. There's this desire to make a contribution. Not everybody can write a huge check, but everybody is willing to write a small check. But they don't know how to make a difference. Who do you write your check to? Will the money be put to good use or not? Okay, I'm not ready to give up a great job on Wall Street, but I'm willing to give half a Saturday, but I don't know where to go and give my time. So and as a result, nobody does anything because it's not easy. So I said, let's create a platform where you can meet instantly like-minded people, and you can begin to get involved in organizations and causes that you care about. And that's why I started this thing called Social Venture Partners in Bangalore 2 years ago. And the idea is simple. Get people together, get them to write a modest check for 3 years, and then let's use venture capital discipline to find organizations that are doing good work in a number of areas. And we pick livelihoods, coincidentally, not-for-profits, NGOs that create jobs. And start working with them, not only to give them money, but to help them scale up. But, if you have, in Bangalore, we have 70 plus members. And as a result, Pune and people in Pune, Mumbai, and other cities have come forward. We're starting SVP in all these places. But if you have 70, 100 influential, successful people, do you just stop at this? Or do you begin to start addressing some of the fundamental issues in the city, the governance issues I talked about? So we decided, okay, let's try an experiment. In Bangalore, let's take on that garbage issue, right, which bothers every one of us. Every street corner, there's a garbage dump with rats and dogs and waiting for the plague to break out. So we funded an NGO. They sued BBMP. Now they're working in partnership with BBMP to try and find the fundamental solutions. We've decided we're also going to support BPAC because they seem to be doing good things. And similarly, we're going to go city by city by city and scale up. Why do I give this long-winded answer? I think it is important to give back. There are a million good causes in India which need your money, which need your time, which need your expertise. Okay? Some of them are small. Some of them have the potential to be scaled up. But fundamentally, if we don't fix governance, everything else is a Band-Aid. whose job is it to deliver primary and secondary education? Whose job is it to deliver, primary healthcare outcomes? And if it's the government's, and if we can't get government to accountable and fix it, there's no amount of philanthropy that's going to fill that gap. So somewhere, as you think about where should I put my money, where should I give my time, where should I use my influence, I argue that you should figure out ways to actually impact, influence systemic failures and address governance as well. And you'll obviously find your own platforms and vehicles for doing this. So personally, I've chosen these two engines or vehicles. One is social enterprises that are addressing these desperate needs, but with a scale-up kind of intention. And the second one is to find a way of engaging 100 people at least, city by city by city, 20, 30 cities, and then eventually putting pressure on accountability in government. In addition, of course, every time somebody who's doing something worthy comes along and moves your spirit, moves your heart, you need to reach for your wallet again. So this is my perspective.
This is phenomenal. There isn't going to be a Kalki avatar that's going to come. So every one of us has to become a Kalki avatar ourselves, right? And then make an impact. And I think that's really what I heard. It's fantastic. And I also heard from you two things, Ravi. You said that bring the discipline and the governance of the venture process and the energy of the venture process and use that to scale. I heard you use that phrase. And that's interesting. And I'm going to just shift back, Dr. Sheilu. You said that there are a couple of other problems that were bothering you. But I also want you to, if you can continue to reflect on what you heard from both Naryan and Ravi, which is, there is the emotional, the angle that's relating to putting a lot of heart in, which is absolutely, that's a start point, absolutely incredibly important. In your own experience of 19 years and what you have seen outside, what they spoke about, how important it is. And I just want you to particularly add on the governance dimension, and that's something that would help the audience here start appreciating. In addition to the area of interest, they would also have to have some mechanism by which they should be able to assess, is this a cause or is this an NGO that I can support? Will it run well and will it sustain itself? Because once you make and I'll come to the giving at multiple stages part, but once you make that investment, you would want that investment to sustain for a period of time.
Ravi, you said venture capital performance. So when that is given to an NGO, for example, what do you really assess? Apart from the due diligence that you will undertake of a particular cause or an organization, when you will be very typically taking a look at the ROI, I think there is absolutely another very neglected dimension of an NGO performance, and that has got to deal with what is the qualitative change that I am bringing about in my organization, in the lives of the people whom we impact. For example, can we have not just measuring my annual report in terms of what is the surpluses, if at all there is in an NGO running year after year, or do you also see and measure the well-being as a result of the work that I have done? How do you measure the wellness impact? That is one. Number two, people also, it's quite easy to identify causes where poverty is a criterion. Apart from the poverty, the physical poverty, which is very easily identifiable, there has also got to be, as givers, a sensibility, a sensitivity to some of the emotional sufferings people are going through. Older people, elderly people, okay. Very poor people, yes, they have huge amount of suffering. But there is also a state where abuse, neglect, loneliness can also be a very painful process of living itself. So if the NGO is attending to this type of a very fine dimension of people's existence, if you are dealing with that, how would you assess that? Should it be assessed and should it receive a support at all? Whenever I do my annual report, I'm very pained. I'm only talking about whether 5 crores has been spent and spent in what. But what about the quality change that we have brought about in the lives of so many people? For example, when I ask aid for recreation centers for the elderly people, because they are very alone, they don't meet people like themselves. When we set up a recreation center, it is treated very lightly. Oh, we would rather not choose a recreation center, but do you have something for a poverty alleviation program? Yes, I said, yes, we do have a ration supply, which does go to about 1,000 very poor people. But don't you think the recreation need also looks into a very niche aspect of suffering, not generally seen and recognized by people?
So, I think both of us
Yeah,
would
Ravi,
love to
both of
respond,
you are going to
but
pounce
since
on
I have
me.
the microphone. I think you raise an incredibly important thing. Not everything can be measured, okay, and certainly not in financial terms. And you've talked about, you know, the reduction of suffering, of sorrow, of all these kinds of things. There's also the spirit of joy. You know, our performing arts in India have, you know, are really languishing for lack of support. Whether it's dance, whether it's literature, it's music, these are highly, highly underfunded fields. So, and I'm not saying that everything should go towards only sort of creating jobs or governance and all that. I think there are many wonderful things which are deserving of our giving and so forth, and I don't diminish that. However, I would say that there is an importance of measuring impact, okay? There are 3.3 million NGOs in India. It's the largest number of NGOs in any country in the world. It's also relatively, you know, there's this organization called Give India, which measures and ranks things or NGOs based on whether they're worth supporting or not. And I'm not saying they may be completely right, but according to them, about less than 10% of them are worthy of support across all fields, because there's a lot of waste, there's a lot of fraud, okay? So when you are putting your hard-earned money to work, you want to make sure that whatever cause you're contributing to, okay, the money will be well utilized, precisely measurable in financial terms. Or,
Ravi,
sorry,
that has got to be done because Give India,
what
for
has
example.
to be done? I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, measurement.
Yes.
Measurement of the well-being and
Correct.
the wellness also
Correct.
got to be done.
Yes.
What Give India does is to give credibility.
Yes.
It says, okay, this NGO is doing good work. It is not amassing money and all their
Exactly.
accounts are perfect
Yeah.
and all that. But
And they can come up with 10%.
they don't measure how much of alleviation of pain and suffering
Correct.
or joy, measurement of joy, for example.
And that onus is on the giver. I think, you know, those who are actually writing the check have to actually go there, engage, and assess how well are they doing. So in SVP, there's a disciplined venture investment process, but it's not about, because we're giving money. We don't expect it back. This is not an investment, nothing. This is actually a grant over 3 years. But what you do is do a lot of due diligence on what is the impact that this organization is hoping to create, how many lives are they touching, etc. I don't sense that there is a fundamental contradiction in that sense.
There isn't at all, Ravi. Now, what I'm hearing from her, and correct me if I'm wrong, as a social scientist, I think this is something, measurement is a part of any scientist's lexicon. What I'm hearing is simply this, is it is the responsibility of the NGO to talk about the impact that it's making. And if I may just add to that, many of the NGOs, most of the NGOs, if I can be a little bold here, talk about the activity that they have undertaken, but they don't measure outcomes.
Yes.
Which is the
And
impact.
so-
But that's what I heard from you. Is that correct?
So the discipline of looking at outcomes in whatever field the organization is operating in is, I think, quite important, because you're basically using other people's money, and therefore you are accountable in that sense.
Absolutely. Can I just add? Yeah, I sort of agree with almost everything Ravi said. The additional element I would add is that rigor and accountability doesn't have to be numbers and things of that nature. It can be fun. It can be fully subjective, and the framework for how you communicate that subjectivity can be entirely yours. So if you define an outcome to be the joy that is being provided to an elderly person in the recreation center, then it is up to you to define that as an outcome, subjective as it is, to the outside world. And some people will see it naturally. I mean, the performing arts, as Ravi was saying, is all about joy. There's no return, there's no ROI. It's about joy. It's about, not just mere joy. In speaking in financial terms, it is 10x leverage on your input of time. If you can listen to an opera or a classical music concert, how do you define what the return is at all? But yet there is quality, and you can distinguish somebody who's not so good from somebody who's very good, and you can distinguish a good acoustic system from a bad acoustic system, and so on. So in a same way, I think the disservice that many sort of pure NGO types are doing is they are saying, trust us, we're doing good. And that's not enough for people who are not fully engaged with observing that trust.
I totally agree. Somebody taught me very early in my life, trust, but verify. But for verifying, you need measurement and data. And I completely understand what you're saying about the subjective stuff. And I happen to be from a sector which does this for a living. We take stuff that is completely subjective, put a number to it, and call it a grade. And that's what we do in education, day in and day out. And most of what education is, and by the way, most of them do an absolutely outstanding job, because that's exactly what they need to do. Now, you could argue about the outcome structure and the framework that's used and so on and so forth, but the fact of the matter is that's something which is done day in and day out. You just have to take it up to the NGOs and the causes that you expose. So let me ask you this. I'm almost hearing from what the others are saying, there is almost a Maslow's hierarchy here. So you give for hunger, the next level is you give for curing a disease, and the level after that is you give for getting a job or creating careers and jobs of people. And then you go above that, you give for softer aspects like loneliness and so on and so forth. And finally, you have art and the joy and all of that. Is this making sense to you, this kind of hierarchy?
Yes.
Yeah. And I just want you to now go beyond the what Vasantharatna does, and then just look at the larger art part of it as well. And is that something, right? Because many people here, I presume, are very fond of art in different ways, music and art, and many aspects of art are deeply in need of help. And art, through the ages, has sustained through philanthropic support of some kind, be it the king or the government or whatever.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with Anand and Ravi here. Arts is absolutely neglected sector, and people don't realize that actually by supporting art, you will get something that is priceless. That you cannot peg it at any tag. And what you take away is actually food for your soul to survive the domesticity of life, the mundane life. And human life is to be lived beyond that. All this is just normal, basic maintenance of the body, But art is where it brings that elevation, that spiritual touch to who we are and why we actually need each other. I think it connects us at that highest and deepest level, and that's why my passion for art is, that's what's keeping me going through whatever has happened in my life. I thank dance for being my mainstay, my core, my touch earth, like I said. So you can't price that. You can't peg it at anything. And it's true that people don't support art, because I don't see why they don't support art. It's they will pay for anything. That you will go to a 5-star restaurant and pay 15,000 on a meal. But when it comes to paying an artist, you'll say, 25,000? Okay, we'll think about it. I mean, that's the reality. It's shocking. So, okay, I want to, you want this?
Not
Yeah,
art, but
okay. I just wanted to go back to a point that Ravi was making earlier, and talk from my own experience about when I started the foundation. And the first thing people were, after that initial reach out to me, they were like, how can we help you? And very many people were reaching out to their pockets to sign out checks. And I had started the foundation. It was a trust. It was an NGO. We had got ATG exemption, but I must have been one of those really funny NGOs who said, please don't give me money yet, because let me figure out how I'm going to use it. And to me, it's a responsibility. I don't want your money without knowing what I'm going to actually do and how I'm going to process it and how I'm going to do what I want to do. So I must have been one of those really weird ones who said, don't give me money yet. So
That's called accountability. So, Naryan.
yeah, actually the contrast on the panel is much less than the contrast it should be versus religious giving. And in India, a disproportionate amount of money goes to outsource your doing good to the Almighty rather than to other organizations. And it may be a pet peeve of mine, but it just seems to me that the relative amount of money that goes to famous temples, even more than neighborhood temples, even if that distinction you want to make, it just seems such a travesty given where India is in its evolution. So, if I could leave you with one other idea, it would be at least diversify away from the neighborhood religious institution.
Let me build on that. Somebody should circulate, Raj maybe, you should circulate. The McKinsey recently came out with a report which looks at, where does funding go in India across sectors. Obviously, religion is right up there. It's probably overfunded. But 3 sectors which are, desperately of need and for your consideration are performing arts, human rights, and governance. Okay? So organizations that are focused on these 3 things are probably desperately more in need, and you might want to think about that.
On that note, just a quick next point to any of the panelists who wants to take up. I heard about giving money and how you have to be careful about where your money goes, and we talked about that. It's absolutely critical. I think it's very important for everybody to be and we talked about outcomes. What about giving time? And what about giving a piece of your heart? I mean, honestly, that's next level, right? You really involve yourself. Is that giving? I mean, is that something that people should consider as a part and parcel of their own architecture, as we started talking about?
No, it absolutely is giving. In fact, in at least the studied version of giving, it's a higher form of giving. But it doesn't have to be. I mean, if, my sister lives in the United States, and one of the things she does is that a group of women get together and cook for others who ask them to cook, like a catering service, and they donate the money to the local charity. So she and I have a raging debate, because each of the women who actually do this are doctors or nurses and they're all of professions that have variable income. So if they spend 1 more hour being a doctor, then they earn, let's say, X. So my constant debate with them is whether that hour is better spent being a doctor and turning the money over, or being a caterer and turning 1/10 of the money over. And she comes back with the emotional, social, community answer to this. So again, I don't pretend to know that the answer of merely the X, which is 10 times greater than the X provided by catering, is better. But there is that debate. So time is a in fact, the most precious resource of our times. And so I would use it very wisely. But for each of us, the answer to the value of time can be very different.
I agree. I think I started out by talking about this need to give back that comes to many of us at some point in our lives. I don't think that need can be quenched by simply writing a check.
Absolutely.
That has been my experience, that unless you also get engaged with the organization and ultimately the people whose lives you're trying to improve or touch, if you don't have forged that emotional connection, that satisfaction, that hunger, never goes away. So I think it's incredibly important and precious at some stage to start rolling up your sleeves and giving back.
Couldn't agree with you more. Yeah. Couldn't agree with you more. The only thing to be remembered is that when you promise to give your time, when you promise to give money and then you cut a check, your bank account gets debited. So, it's done. But when you promise to give time, oftentimes it doesn't get debited in advance. So you really have to figure out a way by which you keep your promise. And it's not easy for us, many of us who are engaged in several other, we have a profession and many other commitments. And I think that's really what I wanted to highlight here. So giving, you have money, but when time is the most precious commodity of our times. Naryan is absolutely correct. But when you make that commitment, and I think NGOs need to depend on it, and it's nobody's intentions to be undependable. It's the force of circumstances, but we have to force the circumstances to ensure that our commitment gets met. On that note, let me just open it up to there are many, many other things that the Entrust team actually gave me a list of points that they wanted me to cover. And if I did that, then we will be speaking for the rest of till breakfast. So since dinner is what they had promised, I can't really do that. So let me just open it up to the audience. Any questions anybody has? Any reaction, thoughts? But prefer questions so that we'll make it as an interactive stuff. Yes.
If you look at India, the culture, like you people were discussing, has been ad hoc giving. Very informal way of giving. Helping out people working at home or donating to temples and things like that. Of late, there's been a lot of interest from especially wealthy Indians to kind of give away, because the concept was quite alien. In India, we kind of save up the wealth for the next generation, right? So now they're passing on this giving as a legacy to the next generation. I think that's really tremendous. It's going to help quite a bit. So people have come across, even corporates with the new CSR initiatives, what I'm coming across is that people don't know where to channelize these funds. Now they want to do it, whether they're compelled to do it, or they really want to do it, they want to give. They are stuck at options. So the accountability, the transparency thing that we were discussing, I think holds a lot of importance here, because people want to know where the money is going and how well it has been utilized. So anything that can be done to structurally change the way NGOs work, how can we make it more transparent?
Actually, the laws are pretty clear. NGOs have to be transparent. I think, without getting into details, and there are two people here, Ravi, you have been doing Naryan, you're also involved, you have to be transparent. The problem is the implementation of the law. Out of the 3.3 million NGOs that Ravi alluded to, a significant number of them are started for purposes which are shady to downright nefarious, and therefore this whole practice of non-transparency has become almost a norm. But my point is, don't worry about them. Out of the 3.3 million, I suppose that every one of us has to find 10 of them, 5 of the causes or NGOs that we have to support, and I think that's not going to be that difficult if we decide to put time, money, and effort. And that's one of the things I have a request to the Entrust team. I always told them that make an attempt to unearth 200 NGOs. I mean, it don't have to be an extraordinarily large number. And over a period of time, it will grow, because every one of us after our own experiences will contribute to that kitty, and that number will grow over a period of time. The thing is to have a structure. Give India, he talked about a structure by which the outcomes are, assessed and measured, and I think that will also come over a period of time. Conversations such as these and impact, a much larger impact that every one of you will make, I'm sure will end up in any other views on this quickly?
I'm going to make a shameless pitch. The mission of Social Venture Partners is to help people become better philanthropists. Okay, we don't need your money. You decide how you give it. But if this path interests you, join us. You'll find like-minded people, and I guarantee you one thing: 2, 3, 4 years from now, you're going to be much, much clearer and smarter about how you want to invest your money. And so, join us. That's the payback of my being here this evening.
I thought somebody had a question. One more question somewhere. Yeah. No? Where was it? Oh, Shobha. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, the lights are too bright.
I have a question for Ms. Subshini, and I don't know how to ask it without seeming rude. The gentlemen were talking about scale, and you were talking about 35 families. Are you thinking about scaling it, or?
See, you know what I'm doing? I'm working with 35 families now, and I believe if I empower them, that will just spread like the ripple effect. They will be able to affect 5 families around them. Each of them, if they take on 5 families, we will spread. So I don't look at it as scaling. I look at it as spreading. Yes.
I was just telling her yesterday when she shared this with me, this is the positive impact of multi-level marketing.
I don't know any management, trust me. I'm seeing stars with these 2 guys here, and I'm like, oh God, I don't know so many things. So I'm just, somebody was telling me, stop working with your heart, use your head also a little bit. I'm like, I don't know how to do that, but it doesn't matter. I'm touching somebody's life, it doesn't matter. So I actually wanted to take on a point about that religious thing in India. And see, we all contribute to temples. And we've started a new thing called Gift a Birthday, where I said I want to recognize divinity in every other human being. So I said, if I'm going to celebrate my birthday, if my father wants to celebrate his birthday in a temple, by having a special puja, we'd rather do, gift a birthday on a martyr's child's birthday, or the lady. Because truly, nobody actually thinks of the woman. In India, for all its progression, the woman is still not treated on par. I really say this very honestly, because I know women in rural India who really treated very badly. And why? Just because she's lost her spouse. What are we talking about progress in this country? I'm really sad.
On that somber note, we have to bring this to a conclusion. We heard a multitude of views, and my takeaways personally, has been a tremendous learning experience for me. 3 or 4 things that kind of stood out. One, and I think as Narayan very clearly said, each one of us has to discover our own individual path. And it's a framework that we need to create for ourselves. And it's going to take some effort, and I'm adding that, some effort from each and every one of us. Several years back, I decided to do that. And I have found over the last 4 years, when I have actually spent time and sit on a couple of boards of NGOs and so on and so forth, I support a couple more. And I have found that the areas that I have chosen for myself, and I'm really not yet reached a point where I can turn around and say, as what Ravi has, where it's really started to make a multiplier difference. But what is really telling me very, very clearly is, if I have to do something about it, I have to. That's what you do in our professional lives, right? If you wanted to do something, if you want to have a goal, I'll actually invest time. And I think that's one very important takeaway. The second takeaway that I heard is there are a number of different areas, whether it is elder care, solace to elders, to rights of martyrs' wives, to the areas, you talked about giving a job, and what Narayan does is gives a pill, 1 in a year, and that makes a difference to 35 million kids already. Or the multiplier stuff that Ravi spoke about, there are multiple different things. There are causes that are not popular, you know. And as the Entrust team said, that what about supporting Alzheimer's or areas of that kind? And, you know, I always distinguish between supporting, you know, causes that are events and eventualities. You know, in Uttarakhand, and that's an example that I keep taking, you know, we normally tend to cut a check for an event that has happened, you know. There is a tsunami that's happened or there is a disaster somewhere. Events trigger a response, and that response often is money, material, and time, right, for a short period of time. And that's the reason why events are something. You can do that, feel good about it, move on with life. But when you start working on eventualities, give somebody a career. That's an eventuality that you grant that person, right? Give somebody solace and a sense of taking away the loneliness. That's an eventuality on a continuous basis that you give. It's a lot tougher thing to do, and I think it's important for us to again distinguish. And I think a lot of the ideas that came up related to stuff that are sustainable over a period of time. And not to say don't give to temples, not to say don't give it to events, but really think about it before you do. And even the temple, what do we do? It's easier for us to put money in a hundi rather than maybe do something. Recognizing that we need to seek, and unless we seek, as givers we seek, we are not going to find. We seek outcomes and governance in the NGOs that we support. And when we ask, or when we seek as givers, as individual givers, I'm very, very, very sure the kind of NGOs that you will all identify, if they are not doing so already, they will respond. And they will respond in a way that's exciting, that's satisfying, and most importantly, that is sustainable over a period of time. So we talked about giving. There is a saying in my mother tongue, which is Tamil, and those of you who understand Tamil may understand this. It says, "Sevik unavilladu poludhu siridhu vayittrukkum iyappadum." What it means is, if you don't have stuff to give to your ears, you have to give something to the stomach. So I think dinner is waiting outside, and I will stop here and leave it to the Entrust team to take it on from here.